women and children to bed and go looking for dinner. Jon Rothstein here on Inside College Basketball Now. I want to remind you to subscribe to Inside College Basketball Now on both Apple and Spotify. We want to be your Bible for the college basketball season and beyond. We're the only college basketball podcast coming to you 52 weeks out of the calendar year. Also want to remind you to both like and subscribe to Inside College Basketball Now on YouTube. We want to get up to 250 likes for this specific show. And we also want you to leave a comment on anything that's on your mind right now in regards to college basketball. I will get to that comment later in the show. And again, a reminder, each and every Monday and Thursday during the 25-26 college basketball season, we will be coming to you at 1 o'clock Eastern on Mondays and Thursdays with a live edition of Inside College Basketball Now. And if you can't be with us live because it conflicts with your lunch hour or conflicts with the meeting, get us on the way home on Apple or Spotify, or get us in the morning when you're going through your early morning workout. We need an army with us each and every episode here on Inside College Basketball Now, and we want you to be all you can be and be a part of our army. And beyond that, beyond the live shows that will be taking place on Mondays and Thursdays at 1 o'clock Eastern, we will also have exclusive interviews on Inside College Basketball Now with the biggest and best names in the sport. So you want to stay tuned to those as well. It was a fascinating weekend in college basketball. So many big games, so many big storylines. It's a little bit of a lighter time right now in the schedule because of finals week, because of the holidays. But that did not preclude us for coming up with three big things. And the first big thing is in relation to the Big 12 and its potential dominance on the 25-26 college basketball season. And that's the notion that the Big 12 could have 6 of the top 16 seeds on Selection Sunday. Now, anybody that follows college basketball knows that the entire season is all a build-up to the NCAA tournament. And it's also a season that revolves around a scenario where every single game matters, where every single game has major substance. And I think as we now have just about 8 or 9 days left in non-conference play, one dominant theme that I have seen is the top heaviness of the Big 12 conference. And when I mean top heaviness, I think there are 6 teams that could be a 4 seed or better on Selection Sunday. And I also think unequivocally, the Big 12 has the most Final Four contenders right now out of any major conference. Now, if you look at the other leagues around college basketball, obviously we have spent a lot of time around the Big East and what's going on with UConn and St. John's separating themselves from everybody else. UConn's obviously going to be firmly in contention to be a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. The ACC is improved. The ACC has gotten great mileage out of Duke, Carolina, and Louisville. Virginia looks promising in its first season under Ryan Odom. But still, after those 3 teams, you feel like there's a little bit of a drop, at least right now, in the ACC. The SEC is not obviously depth-wise in the same position it was last year, but still has a legitimate shot to get 7 or 8 teams in the NCAA tournament. And then I think when you look at the Big Ten, there are 3 teams, Michigan, Purdue, and Michigan State, who are all cemented right now inside the top 10. And there should be great representation from a volume perspective in the NCAA tournament from the Big Ten. But I don't think we see the top heaviness in the Big Ten we see in the Big 12. The Big 12 feels different. And I'm going to tell you why. Because I've spent an awful lot of time on this show breaking down the potential makeup of this conference at the top. And anytime you talk about Big 12 basketball, you want to talk, obviously, about what the state is of Kansas. And Kansas, thanks to its Hall of Fame coach, Bill Self, has, in my opinion, exceeded expectations in the preseason, considering the fact that Kansas has not had Darren Peterson, somebody who's going to be in contention, if healthy, to be a first or second team All-American, and somebody who's going to be in contention to be the top overall pick in the 2026 NBA draft. He has been in and out of the lineup for the Jayhawks, but that has not precluded Kansas from having a very productive non-conference slate. Kansas lost at North Carolina. Kansas lost at home to UConn, and Kansas lost to Duke in the Champions Classic. But beyond that, Kansas has answered the bell. Kansas won multiple games in Las Vegas without Darren Peterson, including an incredible come-from-behind victory over Tennessee. Kansas beat Missouri in Kansas City. Kansas, when Darren Peterson went out of the lineup Saturday against NC State and Raleigh, found a way to win a road game over a quality opponent. And with all that said, with all that Kansas has done, which to me is a byproduct of the greatness of Bill Self, I still firmly believe that what I said prior to the season is still on point, despite Kansas exceeding expectations. If you're slotting and you're looking at the Big 12 right now, based on performance, based on what we've seen from opening night on November 3rd till right now on December 15th, you have to look at Kansas as still being the sixth best team in the Big 12. But that also reiterates that there are major, major Final Four contenders above the Jayhawks. Arizona, on the heels of Saturday night's blowout win over Alabama in Birmingham, is playing as well as any team in college basketball. I know what Michigan has done. I know Michigan has ripped through teams like a chainsaw through butter. But I do want to point out that Arizona still, resume-wise, went to Alabama and beat Birmingham, beat UCLA in Southern California, beat Florida in Las Vegas, won a game at UConn. I know that Braylon Mullins and Tarris Reed didn't play, but Arizona still, to me, is a team that is not just going to be a threat to win the Big 12, but it's obviously now the team that's in the pole position to be the number one seed in the West on Selection Sunday. And that would mean first and second round games likely in San Diego and then regionals in San Jose. Arizona, as we know, has never been to a Final Four under Tommy Lloyd, hasn't been past the Sweet 16 under Tommy Lloyd. Then you look at Iowa State, led by TJ Otzelberger, who led Iowa State 9 days ago to as impressive a road victory as we saw this season when Iowa State went to Mackey Arena and blitzed Purdue by 23 points. Then you look at the fact that BYU has been a team that has answered the majority of the calls it has received. BYU went to Boston, was very competitive against UConn at TD Garden, lost the game. But BYU also won 2 games in Florida at the ESPN Events Invitational, beating Miami, beating Dayton, beat Wisconsin and Salt Lake City, came back and beat Clemson. I was at the game last Tuesday in the Jimmy V Classic. BYU looks the part of a team, thanks to A.J. DeBanza, Richie Saunders, and Rob Wright, that will be inside the top 10 for the majority of the season. And then there's the team that nobody is going to talk about, despite the fact that this has been a program in Houston that has been a number one seed in the NCAA tournament for the past 3 years. But Houston loses a game to Tennessee and Las Vegas, and all of a sudden everybody forgets about the Houston Cougars. That would be a colossal, colossal mistake. Houston is going to get an opportunity to play an Elite Eight caliber game Saturday afternoon in Newark on CBS against Arkansas, who to me clearly is separating itself as the best team in the SEC. So Houston would be the 4th team. And then the 5th team is the team that Arkansas beat, Texas Tech, on Saturday in Dallas. Texas Tech obviously has some things to work out, obviously has a brand new supporting cast around JT Toppin and Christian Anderson. But Texas Tech, in terms of 1-2 punches right now, has as good of a 1-2 punch as there is in the sport, with Anderson, with JT Toppin, who has been unguardable to start the season. He was the Big 12 Player of the Year. He was the first-team All-American last year. This season, he has amplified his production. So those 5 teams, Arizona, Iowa State, BYU, Houston, Texas Tech, to me, are all in position to clearly be top 16 seeds on Selection Sunday. And Kansas is right behind, because Kansas went through the non-conference schedule, at least so far. Kansas is going to play CAA favorite Towson on Tuesday, but the losses are bulletproof. UConn at home is not going to harm you long-term. At Carolina isn't going to harm you long-term, and neither is a neutral site loss to Duke. So I think, given the fact that Kansas is going to play in the Big 12, who also has additional NCAA tournament teams from these 6 that I mentioned, like Oklahoma State, like TCU, I think Baylor as well. Beyond that, we'll see. But the Big 12 is also getting great mileage out of unexpected places like Colorado and Arizona State. I think considering the fact that the metrics are aligned the way they are, if Kansas can continue, and I know that people want to ask a million questions about Darren Peterson, but I learned a lot about Kansas without Darren Peterson in Las Vegas. And again, it's a credit to Bill Self. If Kansas can continue on the pace that it's at, I think there is a legitimate chance that the Big 12 is going to have 6 of the top 16 seeds on Selection Sunday. Now, we're going to have a bracket reveal on CBS in February. And obviously, once we get into the new year, bracketology is going to be a thing that we're going to talk about on this show that you are going to see become part of the vernacular of our country. But with all that said, I don't think there is any doubt whatsoever that the Big 12 has separated itself top to bottom as the best conference in college basketball. And I'm just thinking about now, and I'm somebody who is always an advocate and a proponent to be in a situation when all conference teams are announced that you make sure you only have 5 players on these all conference teams. You know how hard that's going to be to do with the Big 12? AJ DeBanza has to be on there. Jaden Bradley has to be on there. You would think, obviously, at the other teams in the conference, you'd like to spread around. JT Toppin and Christian Anderson have to be on there. So if you're only using 5 players, it is going to be a tough sell for that 5th spot, the way you look at it in the Big 12. And that's why we see so many different conferences put more than 5 guys on these all-conference teams. But that's not really my prerogative. I am an advocate for having 5 players on a team. But beyond this, beyond what the Big 12 has done in terms of star power, beyond these 6 teams, the conference is in a healthy position, in my opinion, to have 8 to 10 teams in the NCAA tournament in 2026. UCF also off to its best start in program history. A lot of this is going to come out of the wash over the next weeks and months. But if you're looking at the Big 12 right now from 30,000 feet, you have extreme depth at the top of the conference. And I think you could see a scenario where a team that is the 4 or 5 seed in the Big 12 tournament winds up making it all the way to the Final Four. I really believe that. And that has happened in the past in other instances. John Beilein in Michigan in 2013 with a 5 seed in the Big Ten tournament wound up playing Louisville for the national championship. And I believe that the same was true in 2018, was the 4 or 5 seed in the Big Ten tournament. And then Michigan went on to play Villanova for the national title in 2018. Remember, you don't have to win these super conferences. And Bill Self talked about this on this podcast over the summer. You don't have to win these conferences to have a great seed in the NCAA tournament. There's been a number of teams in the past, Villanova in 15-16 under Jay Wright, who did not win their conference regular season title, but still found a way to obviously go to the Final Four and win a national championship. Want to continue with our big things and our big headlines from over the weekend? Jon Rothstein here on Inside College Basketball Now.
Only CBS Sports can bring you big time during the heart of Saturday afternoons. It's big time.
It's big time. It's big time. It's big time.
On CBS and streaming on Paramount Plus.
All right, Jon Rothstein back here on Inside College Basketball Now. I want to remind you to subscribe to Inside College Basketball Now on both Apple and Spotify. We want to be your Bible for the college basketball season and beyond. We are the only college basketball podcast coming to you 52 weeks out of the calendar year. Also want to remind you to give us a like and a subscribe on YouTube. We want to get up to 250 likes on this show, and we want you to leave a comment. We want you to leave a comment and let us know what's really on your mind when it comes to college basketball. And we'll get to them later in the show when obviously we get into the interaction and so on and so forth. And also a programming note, Inside College Basketball Now will be coming to you live throughout the 25-26 college basketball season on both Apple and Spotify. And it'll be coming to you obviously on YouTube. But it'll be coming to you at 1 o'clock Eastern with a live show every Monday and Thursday throughout the 25-26 college basketball season. So we want you to make that part of your routine on Monday and Thursday. And if you can't be with us for the show, we want you to catch us on your commute home and on Apple and Spotify. And if you can't make us part of your, obviously, lunchtime routine, be in a situation where you catch us on your commute or during your morning workout on Apple and Spotify. And beyond that, we want you to remember that in addition to the shows on Monday and Thursday, we will be bringing you exclusive interviews with the biggest and best names in the sport throughout the week. So we want you to lock in for that. Now, our second big thing from over the weekend, and it's another big picture thing because I believe in big picture topics. Duke and UConn are going to be in an arms race all season long for the number 1 seed in the East region. Now, when people talk right now about the best teams in college basketball, the general theme is that Arizona and Michigan are at the forefront of the conversation. And that obviously makes a great deal of sense considering what Tommy Lloyd's squad has done and considering the dominance in which Michigan has eviscerated the opponents. But I also think it's a little bit of a disservice, and it's unfair to do that to both of these teams. Now, UConn ripped through the most difficult non-conference schedule in the history of UConn basketball and concluded that on Friday night against Texas. And the only time UConn had a blemish was when Arizona beat UConn at Gamble Pavilion when both Taris Reed and Braylon Mullins were out of the lineup. That's the only defeat UConn has. So if that doesn't happen, if UConn has those two players healthy, UConn to me is getting mentioned with the Arizonas and the Michigans. This is only December. Now about Duke. Duke has been in a situation where it's answered every challenge. Duke is in a situation where it has unequivocally the leader far and away for National Player of the Year in Cam Boozer. But as somebody now who is always looking towards Selection Sunday, I think if you're forecasting things, this is what you have to look at. Arizona, with the work it's done, as long as it stays the course, is going to be a team that is going to be the odds-on favorite to be the number 1 seed in the West region. Michigan or Purdue, depending on what happens in the Big Ten, but Michigan has obviously taken a step forward, is going to be in the Midwest. The South region is obviously to be determined, but if you're Duke and you're UConn, the big thing you want to be looking at right now is what is it going to take to wind up as the number 1 seed in the East region on Selection Sunday when you think about the long-term play. And if you don't think that that makes a difference, go back in time to when UConn won the 2024 national title under Dan Hurley. UConn played its first 2 rounds in Brooklyn and played its Sweet 16 and Elite 8 games in Boston in what was essentially 4 home games for UConn going to the Final Four. If UConn is the number 1 seed in the East region, UConn will play in Philadelphia and then in Washington during the NCAA tournament. Duke is vying for the same thing in terms of being in the East. Duke also very, very conveniently and very smartly, I will add, very intelligently, scheduled a game in Washington, D.C. in February against Michigan in the same venue that will host the East Regionals of the NCAA tournament. So Duke is going to have a dress rehearsal. Now, a lot of things can change the way things are forecasted and the way performance goes throughout the NCAA tournament, but you're looking at things right now. Duke has 2 more big non-conference games. Texas Tech at Madison Square Garden on December 20th, which is obviously Saturday, and also Michigan, the game I referenced in February. Duke has those opportunities on top of the wins that it has, neutral site wins over Kansas and Arkansas, a road victory at Michigan State, and of course, a neutral site victory in Charlotte over Texas. Now, with that said, the ACC is significantly better than it was last season. It's not great, but it is significantly better. Duke is going to have opportunities too against Carolina, against Louisville, against Virginia to get quality wins and better wins than it has recently in ACC play. That is not the case for UConn. UConn is not going to have a plethora of quad one opportunities in Big East play. It has the 2 games against St. John's. You have to hope that other teams like Seton Hall, like Villanova, can step up and amplify their progress. But with that said, UConn to be a 1 seed on Selection Sunday is going to have to be in a situation where it probably wins 17 or 18 Big East regular season games and then wins the Big East tournament at Madison Square Garden. Now, these 2 teams are obviously the teams we're looking at as the favorites now that are going to win 25-plus games and be in a situation where they will compete for the 1 seed in the East region on Selection Sunday. But we have to remember, if one of these 2 teams, Duke or UConn, is not one of the top 4 overall seeds in the NCAA tournament, then we will see a situation where Duke and UConn could be the 1 and 2 seed in the same region, and they would face each other, potentially if seeds held, in an Elite 8 game to go to the Final Four in Indianapolis. That is something that you should keep your eye on. That is something that would be appointment television. And here's another wrinkle I want to add, because I referenced the West region with Arizona and the Midwest region as of today with Michigan. Houston gave up its right to be the host school in the NCAA tournament. And Houston is in a situation where if it's seeded in the South region, it could play regional games at the Toyota Center in downtown Houston. So that is another long-term thing to keep an eye on if a team like a Duke or a UConn was not seeded in the East region, but went to the South as the 1 seed and Houston was on the other side. You could play Houston at the Toyota Center to have to go to a Final Four. That's an under-the-radar thing to keep an eye on. The third big thing that I took away from over the weekend, Nebraska is no longer just a feel-good story. Now, I talked last week on this podcast after Nebraska dominated Creighton, dominated Wisconsin, held those 2 programs to a combined 110 points. I talked about the idea of Nebraska going to the NCAA tournament and winning a game. Because if you are part of that fan base, you are part of one of the most underrated fan bases in all of college basketball. Pinnacle Bank Arena is a great home court. The Haymarket District is a burgeoning area outside of an arena. It is a great town when it comes to a scene around a college basketball game. And coming into the season, based on what I've seen the last couple of years, you had to have the cautious optimism that Fred Hoiberg, because he's kind of cracked the code at Nebraska, might be in a scenario with Rink Mass back, with Price Sanford, where he has created another potential bubble team. Nebraska is playing much better than a potential bubble team. Nebraska is playing now like one of the top 15 teams in all of college basketball. And Saturday, on the heels of a blowout win over Wisconsin and on the heels of a blowout win over Creighton, Nebraska went on the road to Champaign and beat Illinois on a buzzer-beating shot by Jamarcus Lawrence, and in a game, in my opinion, that will wind up being, at least right now, unequivocally, the best victory that Fred Hoiberg has had since he has been Nebraska's head coach. I know that Nebraska has went on the road and beaten Creighton. I know that Nebraska has also had other victories in Big Ten play. But to go on the road to Illinois after having dominant performances in your rearview mirror, after Wisconsin, after Creighton, it was an easy time for Nebraska to have a letdown. It was anything but a letdown. Nebraska now is in a scenario where if it can hold on in its next 2 guarantee games, it will be 13-0 when it plays Michigan State at Pinnacle Bank Arena on the other side of the holidays. That is something that I did not think was a realistic possibility. But because this program has never won an NCAA tournament game, because this program is not generally associated with the top programs in the Big Ten, and it shouldn't be based on history. With all that said, Nebraska is dispelling the notion that it's just an afterthought in the Big Ten. Nebraska is, again, playing like one of the best teams in college basketball and deserves to be ranked in the top 15 nationally. I voted Nebraska 14th with my AP vote. We'll get to the AP top 25 in a second. Also want to get to your comments. Leave them in the chat. I will get to them later in the show. Jon Rothstein here on Inside College Basketball Now.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
All right, Jon Rothstein back here on Inside College Basketball Now. I want to remind you, subscribe to Inside College Basketball Now on both Apple and Spotify. We want to be your Bible for the college basketball season and beyond. Once again, we're the only college basketball podcast coming to you 52 weeks out of the calendar year. Also want to remind you to like and subscribe to the show on YouTube. We want to get to 250 likes on this show for Inside College Basketball Now. And also leave a comment. We will get to it later when we dive into the live chat. And also a programming reminder, Inside College Basketball Now will be coming to you live on Mondays and Thursdays at 1 o'clock Eastern for live shows during the 25-26 season. And in addition to those shows, we will be coming to you throughout the week periodically with exclusive interviews with the biggest and best names in the sport. Now, as we do every single week, we are going to see what the AP Top 25 is, and that means it's time for a Rothstein reaction. Okay, so we look right now. Arizona, Michigan, Duke, Iowa State, UConn. The only difference is, on my ballot, I have UConn in the 4 hole. I have Iowa State at 5. I don't have a major problem with that. I do want to point out again, as I did in the first block, UConn had 1 loss this season, and it came without Braylon Mullins and Tarris Reed. Purdue 6, Gonzaga 7. I'm fine with that right now. Let's go to the next page. Houston, Michigan State, BYU. I have the exact same teams in the top 10. I have Louisville and Carolina flip-flopped. Vanderbilt, I have at 13 on my ballot. Arkansas, 14. So I have Nebraska ahead of Arkansas after that win on Saturday against Illinois. Let's go to the next page. Nebraska at 15. So, okay, I'm not too far off. I have Nebraska ahead of Arkansas by 1 spot. Alabama, Kansas, Illinois is going to be 16, 17, 18. Texas Tech, Tennessee. Tennessee is a little too high for me right now. Then I have Auburn. Let's see what we have after that. St. John's, Florida. I have Florida a little bit higher despite the record because I believe that Florida has had one of the more difficult schedules in college basketball. So I have Florida somewhere in the late teens. And then I have Virginia is going to be 24, and then Georgia is 25. I have Georgia, I think, 27. So I don't hate the AP poll at all. I'm not, too angry about that. But I think for the most part, I have 24 of the 25 teams, Georgia being the only one. I believe I had USC in the 25 spot on my ballot. So always fun to see what works and who's receiving votes now. So Southern Cal was the number 1 school receiving votes. Iowa 47, and Seton Hall, again led by Shaheen Holloway, right behind. So I was in play for 25 of the 26 compared to the AP poll. Let's get now to the comments in the chat. As always, we say this show is about you. Inside College Basketball Now is about you, the college basketball fan. So as always, this is interaction. J.K. Riggins says, John, Villanova, Wisconsin, please. Well, I'm sure you are talking about Friday night's game at Fiserv Forum, and that is going to be a pivotal game for Villanova's chances to potentially build an at-large resume for the NCAA tournament. Kevin Willard's squad hasn't really helped or hurt themselves yet, but that is a big game Friday night in Milwaukee. SVES411 says, is Arkansas the best team in the SEC? Yes, and I would say, based on the way Alabama played and was dominated by Arizona's front line on Saturday night in Birmingham, I don't even think it's close. I think Arkansas is clearly the best team in the SEC, and the best team in the SEC will play again Saturday on CBS. I'll be on the call with Rich Waltz and Steve Lapis, 5:30 Eastern in Newark against Arkansas. It's Arkansas and Houston. It's an Elite Eight caliber game. Let's keep going. TJ980i says, John, UConn healthy is the best team in the nation, hands down. Well, this is what I'll say, too, about UConn. In these non-conference games that UConn has won, beating Texas on Friday night, beating Florida at Madison Square Garden, beating Illinois at Madison Square Garden, I feel like the Huskies have been in a situation, even the Kansas game, where I never really felt like they were going to lose. And I know in a lot of these games, you know, it's supposed to be a possession game, possession here. I felt that UConn has had complete control. It's a credit to the depth that Dan Hurley has built. Okay. Let's see what happened. People are saying the Arizona game was at Stores. If I said something different, I apologize. But yes, I know it was a Gamble Pavilion. John, if you haven't tried it yet, go get some Mucinex and nasal spray. Don't use it more than 3 days, but super helpful for congestion. I feel your pain, brother. Something happened. I woke up Saturday with the sniffles, and I'm still trying to shake it. It's like dealing with a bye game. But yeah, I mean, saunas, Tylenol, cold and sinus, it's all part of the rotation now. Rick Blakarski says, John, Wake Forest lost to Michigan in OT by 1 point. Could be a sleeper in the ACC to give UConn and Duke a test. I mean, Wake Forest, I think, is going to be a competitive team. I don't know if they're necessarily going to be a sleeper. There's a number of other teams in the ACC that I think are on the periphery of pushing for an NCAA tournament berth. Virginia Tech is one with Mike Young. Notre Dame, even though they had the injury to Marcus Burton, I think it's a nice team under Micah Shrewsbury. I'm looking at the ACC. Obviously, Duke, Louisville, North Carolina, Virginia feel like they're cemented at the top. All four have been ranked in the top 25. NC State is capable, but NC State let a big opportunity get away Saturday against Kansas. Keep going here on the chat. Leave your questions and comments. Ashley Quinlan, 8335, says, John, thoughts on St. John's UK matchup on Saturday? Well, this is what I'll say. Kentucky played exceptionally better on Saturday night against Indiana than it has for the majority of the season. No surprise, Mohamed Diabate was back for Kentucky, the utility player that Kentucky has been lacking. With that said, I want to point out that I was one who tried to act a little bit pragmatic when Kentucky was having all the struggles, because how many teams in college basketball, if they don't have their glue guy at power forward, and if they don't have their point guard, are going to be able to handle a non-conference schedule like Kentucky? Not many. So with that said, I felt that it would take Kentucky some time to get some rhythm back with Jalen Lowe. I don't feel that Kentucky would also, it would take some time to get back with Mohamed Diabate. But when that has happened, we have seen Kentucky, in my opinion, I know it was just one game against Indiana, play better basketball. For St. John's, this game Saturday on CBS in Atlanta is the last opportunity to get a non-conference win of significance. It's Rick Pitino against his old team. It's Rick Pitino against his old captain. It presents incredible, incredible theater for Saturday afternoon on CBS. 3 good nuggets right now as we continue to wind down here on Inside College Basketball Now. Nugget number 1, Malachi the Magnificent. I'm talking about UConn's Malachi Smith. In his last 2 games, he has 18 assists to 4 turnovers. You will be hard-pressed to find a better backup point guard in college basketball. Nugget number 2, all eyes on TB. I'm talking about Arkansas, Trevin Brazile. Arkansas's Trevin Brazile. In the Razorbacks' 2 wins over Louisville and Texas Tech, which happened on Saturday, Brazile is averaging 22.5 points and 7.5 rebounds. When he goes, so do the Razorbacks. X marks the spot. This is in relation to Florida's Xavion Lee. Lee, in 3 out of his last 4 games, has scored 19 or more points for the Gators. So I know Florida's backcourt is a major work in progress, but Lee is showing tangible growth over the last couple weeks for Todd Golden. 3 games to watch. Tuesday, Butler travels to UConn. Louisville is at Tennessee. And then Wednesday night at Pauley Pavilion, Arizona State is at UCLA in 3 under-the-radar games. On Tuesday, DePaul is at St. John's in a Big East opener. Meanwhile, Towson is at Kansas. Towson's the CAA favorite. And then Vanderbilt later in the week will take on Memphis. The Commodores still undefeated. Want to remind you to subscribe to Inside College Basketball Now on both Apple and Spotify. We want to be your Bible for the college basketball season and beyond. Once again, we're the only college basketball podcast coming to you 52 weeks out of the calendar year. And also want to remind you that in addition to our live shows at 1 o'clock Eastern on Mondays and Thursdays throughout the 25-26 college basketball season, we will be bringing you additional episodes of Inside College Basketball Now throughout the week with exclusive interviews with the biggest and best names in the sport. I'm Jon Rothstein, and this was Inside College Basketball Now.